They are rage, brutal, without mercy. But you will be worse. Rip and tear until it is done.
I've been a fan of the Doom franchise since I was a kid, even at the time when I was more into the racing games personally, but Doom was an exception, whereas my brother preferred Halo. The classic Doom series, Doom 3 and its expansion, I got a mixed bag of emotions going through them all. I loved the simplicity of Doom 1 and 2, the graphics and horror-centric atmosphere of Doom 3. There really isn't a bad game in the series in my opinion. Its worst game is still better than most other games that I've played. The only other series where I can say the same is Dark Souls, where Dark Souls 2 is considered the worst, but I still love the game, and so do many other people. After Doom 3, when the dust settled and people moved on, there was anticipation for an eventual sequel, but we would be waiting for a very, very long time. A few years later after the release of Doom 3, we had eventually gotten a presentation of Doom 4, where the demons had invaded Earth, seemingly a follow-up to its predecessor where our efforts seemed to have been in vain. It showed a cast of characters, and it seemed like it would follow the same footsteps, emphasizing a focus on storytelling and world building. But unfortunately, the game would never come to be. Clashes within its development cycle, and struggling to identify what they wanted Doom 4 to become, the decision to start from scratch was eventually made. And thank God for that, because when they unveiled it once again, it blew everyone away. And despite the nervous anticipation for its eventual release, it exceeded every expectation thrown at it, and came out as an absolute miracle of a game, rebranded as Doom, or in other words, Doom 2016. What we got was a franchise that was reborn through the best blend of modern graphics and old school fast-paced gameplay ever created. The boomer shooters that came to life shortly after, this was the game that set the trend. And more importantly, it finally restored a balance in the FPS genre that was desperately needed. I personally credit this game as the mediator that has brought the market into a harmony where slow and fast-paced games can finally coexist, rather than have one over the other like we did when every other company wanted to make their own Halo and Call of Duty. In 2016, id Software and Bethesda would rock the FPS world that hasn't been done for a long time at that point, with Doom 2016. Okay, so the original concept was scrapped out, but instead, a retelling of the UAC Mars facility invasion is told once again, and the game begins with your character escaping from what appeared to be a sarcophagus of sorts. From the very get-go, the game throws a group of enemies at you, letting you know that this is going to be a buffet of blood and guts, and not the sort of day where you split your 3 meals into different time periods. To an extent, it's the same story as the original, where the UAC experiment with teleportation technology and it goes horribly wrong, and you, the Doom guy, are dragged into the whole mess. Except this time, you're called the Doomslayer, but the terms are interchangeable since they're both the same person but with different titles. This is personally my favorite design of the character from the entire series, even more so than Doom Eternal, and that's because the Praetor suit strikes a balance between being flashy yet practical at the same time. With this version of the Doom guy, including his appearance in Doom Eternal, this is him at his strongest. With little to no effort, he displays incredible strength and speed, and the background lore gives some insight into why he's this powerful in the first place. And yes, while this game could be seen as a reboot, it's actually not. In technical terms, you could call it a semi-reboot, but it's actually more or less a direct sequel to Doom 64. Spoilers ahead. In the lost levels of Doom 64, the Doom guy ends up getting trapped by the demons, after trying an eternity to kill him. The opening of Doom 2016 is more or less a follow-up to that, but after a fairly long time since he was imprisoned. Doom 2016 creates this beautiful blend of lore and world building without it getting in the way. Throughout the entire game, the story only adds to the experience, rather than disrupting the ebb and flow of the game's action. Through holograms, codexes giving you bits and pieces of information into Doom 2016's universe, and the in-game cutscenes that behave in real time, rather than being their own entity. Later on, you will find tablets that are also named Testaments, which brings out a demon's voice telling the legend of the Doomslayer, as in the Doom guy. adding a mythos to his being, which I thought was really well done. Doom 2016 is able to frame the story into something that can be ignored or given time towards, because either way, it never disrupts the action. Save for a few specific moments where the characters of the game begin talking to you and you can't do anything, and no, there's no way to skip them either. The central characters of this game is you, the Doomslayer, Dr. Samuel Hayden, the head of the UAC, and is the person who sets things in motion, not even showing a hint of regret as to the outcome of events, considering that his efforts to exploit Hell's infinite resources was worth the price. Then you have Vega, an AI companion who enables access to the various sectors of the Mars facility as the Doom guy progresses throughout the game. You also have a human villain as well, Dr. Olivia Pierce, who has been following the will of the demons throughout the game, which points to her as being the prime suspect of the Mars invasion. Like Dr. Petruga from Doom 3, you never really encounter her in the same room, only a part where you can't reach her, but you know that she's only being manipulated by the demons into doing what they want, which is most likely a ticket to Earth. Speaking of Mars, for an endless barren desert of nothing, id Software does a fantastic job of presenting the player with incredible backdrops, compounded by the grand design of the facility, where you'll spend a good portion of the game being in. It's kind of like what Doom 3 did with its own facility, providing an incredible number of interior sections that made the whole place a lot bigger than what it seemed. But Doom 2016 does it better on both a technical and visual level. At some point, more spoilers ahead, you end up going to Hell. This for me personally are my favourite sections in the whole game. Levels like Kadinga's Sanctum, Titan's Realm, Necropolis and Argent Denua are where the Hellfire and Brimstone really come to life, and it's where you'll find the sweatiest of arenas in this game. It sticks true to its roots, and does so with a more horror-like aesthetic which I love. From the designs of the game's iconic monsters to the seemingly infinite hellscapes and the high-tech UAC facility that's been pretty much ravaged, the game is full of danger but also full of rooms to rip and tear in. The lore is interesting and only adds more appreciation to an already fantastic game. The setting is limited in its variety, but its technical achievements in terms of what was accomplished is nothing but commendable. And the Doom guy is back, stronger than ever before. Have you ever played something that from beginning to end has been an amazing and consistent power trip? For me, Doom 2016 is 100% that game through and through. It is very, very hard to find critical faults here, from both movement to gunplay and combat flow. The painstaking work that id Software had gone through to resurrect this franchise had not only paid off, but it officially made the franchise popular in the mainstream market once again like it used to be back in the day. And a lot of that is thanks to its jaw-droppingly awesome gameplay. It is one of those things where you would have to experience it firsthand to fully appreciate what id Software have done with Doom 2016. Explaining it does not do enough justice here. From beginning to end, you feel like an absolute badass, even with just the starting pistol. And the game constantly rewards you with the display of skills, the acquisition of new weapons that, mind you, are given detail to its fullest, and butter-like sense of movement and combat. It's just smooth. Not slow, not janky or too fast, but smooth with enough relative speed to give it a great sense of overall speed and prowess throughout each arena. All the weapons come back in glorious form, along with some new members into the family. The pistol, which gives you infinite ammo, but is weak. The combat shotgun, better than Doom 3's, but not as good as the original. Then there's the super shotgun, which replaces the former entirely considering how easy it is to get ammo for it. The heavy assault rifle, which is a good mediary between having good range but moderate damage. The plasma rifle, once again a projectile-based weapon that's like the heavy assault rifle but on steroids, if you can hit targets consistently with it. The chain gun, which is a wind-up at first, but in full fire, it puts down most enemies fairly easy. The rocket launcher, hard-hitting, reliable, and also easy to kill yourself with. The Gauss cannon, which is my favourite weapon altogether, is the game's 50 caliber sniper rifle basically. Hits like a truck, and if in the air, can make you leap further distances away than you can by yourself. And finally, the BFG 9000. I've had my issues with it in the past titles, but in this game it does absolute wonders. You fire it across or a few feet up in the air, and its volley of random lightning particles will pretty much fry almost anything. Occasionally the bigger enemies will sustain damage and still be alive, but you can finish them off just as easily with other weapons. As for the chainsaw, it's more of a utility item rather than an actual weapon like in the other games. You find fuel for it which you can then use to automatically chainsaw an enemy to death, giving you shitloads of ammo. The bigger the enemy though, the more fuel is needed, so you need to keep an eye on it. Speaking of utility, you also have the use of grenades, which can come in handy. You have your standard hand grenade, made for blowing shit up, Then you have the hologram, which acts as a distraction, giving you time to form a cluster and blow them to Kingdom Come. Then finally, the siphon grenade. Rather than blowing or distracting, it acts as both a restoration item and a destructive item, healing you as well as damaging enemies within its radius. Every weapon in the game has its purpose, and honestly you can use whichever one you want. On my Nightmare playthroughs I usually rotate between the rocket launcher, the super shotgun and the Gauss cannon, and the occasional chainsaw and BFG blast. I've been able to clear every arena with them, which also means that the other weapons often get ignored, but that's the great thing about this game. It doesn't force you to play rock paper scissors in the way Doom Eternal does. You can literally beat the entire game with just the pistol if you want to. To add more utility to the weapons, almost all of them have 2 mods each that give an alternative method of firing, and trust me, you're gonna want them. But they're all incredibly useful, except for the rotator though, that thing sucks. The best thing that Doom 2016's gunplay does for you is provide freedom in how you want to approach combat scenarios. Now while there are more efficient methods and viable strategies that will help you clear the arenas faster, it's really up to you on how to do it. But even then, don't get too comfortable, because all the enemies can give you a load of trouble if you're not paying attention and get too complacent. Almost all the iconic enemies make it here, save for a few. Your Imps, Hell Knights, Barons, Revenants, Pinkies, Mancubi, Cacodemons, Lost Souls, and Spectres all make a return, along with some iconic boss fights like the Cyber Demon and the Spider Mastermind. id Software have all given them a familiar but different look, one that follows its own identity rather than the original, which was what disappointed me about Eternal, that they didn't commit to that same art style, since in my honest opinion, it looks so much better in Doom 2016. The game also adds some new enemies into the mix, like the zombies, which act as chainsaw or glory kill food when you're low on health or ammo, and just serve mostly as an environmental hazard during combat, except for the unwilling. Watch out for those. Hellraisers are the game's chain gunners, but they're not hit scan. In fact, there aren't any hit scan enemies at all in Doom 2016. All ranged attacks are projectile based, which means they can be dodged most of the time. The Summoner replaces the Archvile but is like a squishier version. It darts around the map quickly, making it a pain in the ass to hit most of the time, but a lock-on burst will stop it immediately, or a stun bomb with the plasma rifle. They all have a great look that invokes a feeling of dread if you weren't the Doomslayer. They're fast in terms of mobility and speed and are always on the move, which means you need to be as well. They've done a lot to give the enemy a great deal of variety in terms of movement and combat ability, and move about in such a chaotic manner that you can never really sit still for any reason without the threat of imminent danger. The arenas themselves are set in place to give you a needed edge, supplying you with ammo, health, armor, power-ups like haste for super speed, quad damage for double damage, invulnerability for not being able to die for a period of time, and my favorite, the Berserk power-up that kills anyone within range. All you have to do is rip and tear until it is done. To add a sense of brutality to the whole affair, they've included the use of glory kills, a way to finish the enemy off before they can recover. Whether they go into this mode or not is dependent on how much damage you've inflicted on them exactly, but most of the time you'll just be going with the flow of combat that it won't matter too much. The glory kills themselves demonstrate the sheer strength of the Doom guy, who was only able to exhibit this level of strength in the other Doom games by using the Berserk power-up, but it seems like the Doom guy in this game is more enhanced than even the strongest human, from ripping the horn off of a Cyber Demon or a Baron, the snapping of a Hell Knight's neck, ripping a zombie's arm off, you name it. The Berserk mode also yields different animations that look much more brutal in comparison, but all in all, the glory kill system works really well and adds a layer to the already amazing combat. The combat is further improved by the usage of weapon upgrades for your mods, upgrades for your Praetor suit and Argent energy cells to increase armor, health and ammo capacity. On higher difficulties like Ultra Violence, Nightmare and Ultra Nightmare, you're going to need all the help you can get, but on lower difficulties players won't have to worry about maximizing all the upgrades as much. Now while Doom 2016 more or less does its own thing, it still pays homage to the original Doom games in more ways than one. For starters, the maps are multi-layered with a ton of spots to explore, with tons of secrets. Each level has been blessed with nooks and crannies that reveal said secrets, whether it's collectible items, more ammo, health, and armor, or straight up recreations of classic levels which you can get to by pulling a secret lever, which opens a door nearby. If you go into the incredibly extensive options menu, you can set the game's weapon view to the classic weapon pose, which suits the game really well actually, and even gives it more of an old school feeling to it. Doom 2016 is very faithful in this regard, but is also not afraid to present that it is doing its own thing. It isn't trying to be too much like its predecessors. For audiophiles and metalheads, this game is pretty much an industrial metal wet dream, filled with demonic forces, tight and snappy weapons, and one of the best gaming soundtracks composed for a shooter. The combination of ambience, noise, and atmosphere also compound additional layers to the game's overall sound design, along with the clever use of the game's music, putting in ambience when it's quiet, and then immediately escalating it into a metal paradise, thanks to the incredible work of Mick Gordon, someone who has also composed other games like Killer Instinct, Prey, Wolfenstein, and many other games, and other compositions. But Doom 2016 is his most notable work. Tracks like Rip and Tear, BFG Division, Damnation, Hellwalker, and Harbinger, and At Doomsgate are the standout tracks for me personally. The game's music is engineered in such a way that it never becomes overbearing in the flow of combat, even stopping and starting during glory kills, and when you're going through the weapon wheel, it also slows down. I haven't seen a good number of games that plays with its music in the way that Doom 2016 does. Everything across the board in terms of sound is masterfully done. Doom 2016 is just flat out gorgeous with its display of action and horror, from the designs of weapons, enemies, and levels. Everything, from top to bottom, is given copious amounts of detail that would take smaller studios eons to do. This game had a massive team behind it, and it all paid off in the end. In 2022, the game still looks amazing even to this day. And that's not just because of its high budget, but it's also because of its commitment to presenting an art style that was realistic but also memorable, aging like fine wine for the foreseeable future. I haven't upgraded my computer in a while, but even then, this game still runs really well, rarely missing a drop and not seeing any stutters during gameplay. This is another thing I like more about Doom 2016 than Eternal, the art style specifically, but that's just personal preference at the end of the day. But what is definitely fact is that the game is still visually stunning, and still holds up really well even in 2022. Doom as a franchise has always had multiplayer, but it was never really recognized as such in the way that Quake was, where in that game, the multiplayer reigned supreme. But still, id and Bethesda decided to do it anyway, providing an arena-based shooter mode with loadouts, power-ups, power weapons, and items to pick up. Honestly, it's not too bad. It's actually pretty fun. You can customize the look of your avatar and even the weapons, adding in a new pattern or a new color, which was something I wish was implemented in the single player as an option, at least like in Doom Eternal. The multiplayer component also adds a whole heap of new weapons, and even some exclusive demons into the mix. They have a nice feeling to them, but they don't feel the same as the single player counterparts do in my opinion. The Hellshot, however, is one that I've been liking quite a lot. You have two modes, Deathmatch and Team Deathmatch, supplied with a nice variety of maps that are structured like the maps from Quake or Unreal Tournament. One other thing too, the mode also gives you the ability to access demon runes, which turns you into said demon for a time. They play as if you were fighting them and exhibit the same sort of attacks. My favourite is the Baron of Hell personally, for the sheer size and its speed, and its glory kill is absolutely monstrous. All in all, the multiplayer is pretty fun. It's a shame that they didn't do much else with it, and as far as I know, not a great deal of people are playing it anymore. But I'm sure you can find some people that are dedicated to its multiplayer, and if not, then you can go online and hit up some people. They're always out there. As for the Snapmap, I have mixed feelings on this one. Conceptually, it's great. The idea of making your own custom content for an already amazing game is already an appreciated addition. The map making tool in itself is quite intuitive and yet simple, giving you a list of resources that you can use to make detailed maps with minimal effort. And going into the browser mode of the Snapmap, you can enjoy a wealth of content made for it. But the weapon limit system is where they dropped the ball. In multiplayer it made sense since they implemented a loadout system, but in Snapmap where it's pretty much custom single player content with co-op added to it, it never really sat right with me. It lets you use the multiplayer weapons, and you can customize your avatar and weapon look just the same, but exclusive demons as far as I know aren't in it. It's like a gimped version of single player if I'm being honest. There was a lot of potential here, but I feel that it was just mostly wasted. For me, this is the game's weakest point, and while there are some amazing custom levels, I don't find myself coming here often, when I can just play the infinitely better single player mode instead. That doesn't limit how many weapons I can carry. However, Doom 2016 does actually have a modding community, adding in their own master levels, which are just the same levels as the campaign but way harder, reshades and miscellaneous add-ons that add more to the mix. However, it's not quite as extensive or flexible as the classic Doom modding community is, and unfortunately it never will be, because the framework for it was never made. I can only hope that at the very least, that more passionate fans of the Doom 2016 community will continue providing more custom content, for Doom 2016, because id Software and Bethesda certainly won't, not when they have other projects to work on. Doom 2016 is quite frankly a miracle. Never would I have ever expected this game to be this good, and with the mixed reception after the release of Doom 3, there was certainly a worry as to whether the next Doom would be slow again, but to everyone's relief, it wasn't. It was in your face, loud and full of kick-ass industrial metal, some of the most polished graphics, gunplay and sense of movement I've ever seen in a shooter. Doom 2016 is pretty much the perfect power trip in my eye. id Software, with the help of Bethesda, once again proved to the world that Doom was still relevant, still out there, and was still a kick-ass franchise as it always has been. And because of Doom 2016, fast-paced shooters now have a big market for those who want something that's not too slow or tactical, and something that will let them fly with speed and rip and tear throughout the hellish arena. The classic Doom series inspired generations of shooters over the years, and I have no doubt that Doom 2016 and its follow-up, Doom Eternal, will do the same for the FPS genre as it is today. Thank you for watching.
Welcome. I'm Dr. Samuel Hayden. I'm the head of this facility. I think we can work together and resolve this problem in a way that benefits us both.
Everything.
I'm willing to take full responsibility for the horrible events of the last 24 hours, but you must understand. Our interest in their world was purely for the betterment of mankind. Everything has clearly gotten out of hand now, yes. But it was worth the risk. I assure